Hello, everyone, and thank you to the 8th Annual New York State History Month Lecture Series from Schoharie Crossing State Historic Site. I'm Dave, you're the audience, and we are going to have one heck of an interesting program this evening. I'm looking forward to it, as should you. Lisa Wiles is the park coordinator at the Liz and Dave Beebe Camillus Erie Canal Park. Before joining the park, Lisa enjoyed a 20-plus year career in the nonprofit world in the Western New York area, working in fundraising, education, and development for places like the Seneca Park Zoo, the Humane Society of Lollypop Farm, Special Olympics, junior achievement, and children awaiting parents. Lisa moved to the central New York area after marrying her husband, Dan Wiles, owner of Mid-Lakes Navigation, and she became the first mate on the Emita II, ferrying and educating thousands of passengers up and down the waters of the Erie, Cayuga, Seneca, and Oswego Canals. Just a short 18 months ago, Lisa was appointed as a park coordinator at the Liz and Dave Beebe Camillus Erie Canal Park and is their first full-time employee in 50 years. As a Town of Camillus employee, Lisa is the liaison between the government and not-profit bodies which maintain the park. The park features over 420 acres, 14 miles of trails, and the restored 1842 Nine Mile Creek Aqueduct. And that is an active boat sightseeing program, and they have a highly successful education program. So please welcome Lisa Wiles.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, and I'm really excited to be here. I think we probably have a lot of similarities between our two locations, and I think it's important because we do have the aqueducts in common as well as the canals, that we're getting the word out as much as possible so as many people as possible can visit both sites. And I am going to use my opportunity here to almost hopefully act as a travel vlog to get you all excited to come and see us at the park. When I had heard about Camillus, certainly long before I had taken the position there. And one of the things that I've learned over the last 18 months is that hopefully you've come to see us in the past. If you haven't, you need to. But a lot of people that have come to see us have not seen us in a long time and don't really see all of what we're doing today. And so I'm taking this opportunity to hopefully get you excited about going a little bit west and coming to visit us. So let's start the presentation. So you can't talk about where we are without going back to where we started. Now, we have two versions of the canal on the property. We do have Quinton's Ditch and the first enlargement, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But with the opening of the barge canal, the Erie Canal, 1917, 1918, our section, as well as most sections of the first enlargement over just a few years, were abandoned. Very active before and almost nothing later. Fast forward about 50 years to 1972, and our founders, Dave and Liz Beebe, who some of you may know, but they were a group of bird watchers. And they used to go to the location where the park is currently located with other people, because the great thing about abandoned canal is it's great bird habitat. You have downed trees, you have brush, a little bit of water. Unfortunately, also at the site, you had a lot of trash. And in fact, the town of Camillus was going to turn the property into the town dump. And the Beebes and the group that they started forming recognized the historical significance of the property and petitioned the town to not make it a dump, but why don't you make it a town park? And they were successful enough that the town went and purchased 165 acres from the state of New York and went back to the Beebes and their little group and said, you know what, that was a great idea. We should make this a town park, and you have to do it. And so for 50 years, all that the park was and all that it has become was completely accomplished by volunteers. So we are now from 165 acres, as Dave had mentioned, we're 420 acres. We have 6 miles of watered historic canal. We have boats, we have a museum, all that I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes. But it really has been an incredible accomplishment by them. I think this, for those of you who know the Beebes, this is Dr. David Beebe and Liz Beebe. Picture was taken last summer as part of our 50th year celebration. The Beebes have been incredible visionaries for this. And I think as well as the town, and Dave had mentioned in the introduction, um, it is an interesting coordination between a government body and a not-for-profit group that has made this very successful, and that doesn't always happen. The Beebes had the vision, the town joined in, it got really big, we were able to get to 50 years, but I don't think they would mind me telling you that the Beebes are 89 years old. Liz is completely retired from the park at this point. Dave still is out twice a week at least, but his duties have changed a little bit. And again, I give credit to both sides for vision. Unfortunately, we are probably all aware of places that had very strong leaders and created these amazing places. And then when they were gone, that they created might not have continued. And no one wants that to happen. So as David mentioned, I was hired about a year and a half ago. And part of my job is to set the park up for the next 50 years, which we're all looking forward to, and also try and figure out how we got where we are. So that's a continuing adventure every day. But this is our celebration that we had yesterday, last year, and we were very, very excited to make it certainly this far, and now we're on to 51. So to tell you a little bit about what we have at the park, if you arrived, the first thing you would probably notice, in addition to the water, is Sim's store. So that large brown building to the left, and actually originally only that center section is Sim's store. It is a replica of an actual family who ran a store named Sim's. It was about 3 miles up on the berm or the heel side of the canal. It was active, very active along the first enlargement. And unfortunately, it burned in the middle 1900s. And so by the time the park was up and going, they couldn't move it. So they decided to make a replica of it so people can, and especially kids, could really see what it was like. When you enter Sim's store, on the left-hand side, you can see we have it set up just as a store would have been. We do have some photographs, so we have tried to make that accurate. We also have a gift shop, so if you come to visit, we enjoy that. That's one of the volunteers setting up the gift shop to the left. Over to the right, you'll notice a photograph cutout. That is actually Ralph Sims. Ralph Sims was the great-grandson of the owner of the original Sims store. He became the town historian for Camillus and was a very active volunteer at the park. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but before then, they had a photography project where they photographed a number of volunteers doing some activities, and we were able to place those around the park. So it's actually kind of nice that Ralph is still able to join us behind the counter of his family store all these years later. One of the rooms we have in the downstairs of our museum, you'll see to the left, that's our gears lock room. And that photograph, you can't really tell in the picture, but that photograph takes up the entire back wall of that room. And that is an actual photograph of gears lock, which was lock 50 on the first enlargement. If you can squint real hard, you'll see lock 50 on that, the lock tender's shanty. And it's really a great picture. Because you see the boat going through the lock. It was a normal run to Syracuse, but it's great to see everyone dressed up, and there are different figures along the way that we're able to point out to visitors. But to really see, Gears Lock is about 6 or 7 miles from our location of the park. It is the closest lock that we had to our facility, but that is Gears Lock, so it's pretty exciting to be able to see that. Part of our upstairs section over to the right, we have a lot of implements for boat building. Those are bilge pumps also up on the wall. And we have a number of other implements as far as building the actual canal. So people can not quite get hands-on. We're working on that, but they're close to it. Also upstairs on the left side, we have our aqueduct room, and obviously the aqueduct's very important to us. This was a mural that was painted quite a few years ago, and it's kind of interesting. In the packet boat, there are actually two figures on the packet boat, and that is Dave and Liz. They were the models for those. And this is our aqueduct, or that's a visualization of our aqueduct. But some of you may know Mike Riley, and Mike Riley is the president of the American Canal Museum. He lives probably about 30 miles from our park and is actually a volunteer when he has time to do it. But he was a very active volunteer in the past. And the mule driver, the young man driving the mules, and the young woman sitting on that back wall are actually, the models were his children. So it just brings a little bit of home back to everything. Speaking of home, on the right-hand side, we have a replica of a 1850-ish bedroom. And the kids that come love this bedroom. And I realized after I put the photograph into the presentation that I cut out their favorite part of the bedroom, which is our chamber pot. So, you know, the kids really enjoy that story, but whatever makes them learn, it's good. Whatever they remember is good. We have a number of outbuildings on the property. So to the left is actually a replica of that lock tender shanty that you saw in that photograph, the Lock 50. It is accurate. Has a stove inside, has a little desk, and we have that open when visitors are coming through. That is right on the towpath, so it's one of the things that people can see perhaps when the museum's not open. I should mention that from April through early October, that's our busy season, we are open to the public 4 days a week. So Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. We have shifted now to our winter hours. We are open year-round on Saturdays from 12 to 4. And then certainly by appointment if something was coming up. I'm there all the time. And we have work crews, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So it's still very active at the park. The park itself is open daily, but our museum area is only open the 1 day a week now. To the right, we have a stump puller. It's a full-size model, and I know in some circles of the canal world, stump pullers are controversial right now. Regardless of that, we actively use this within our programs, our education programs, for a little STEM work, a little math, a little talk about pulleys and levers and distribution of weight, and the kids really enjoy that. We have a mule barn, a small one, and a blacksmith shop behind our museum. To the left, that's Daisy. She is a life-size mule replica, and the volunteers this year put wheels on her. So we're able to wheel her out, so especially the little kids can come and pet her and get their picture taken with her. To the right is our blacksmith shop. Now that's another photograph stand-up place or person there. That was Bob. Unfortunately, Bob is also not with us. He was a farrier. And so a lot of this is his actual equipment that we've been able to put back into a setting so people can enjoy. They can look at all the different implements that he would have used. This is the cutout that scares me the most because I forget he's in there. He's very lifelike. When I open the door and scream every once in a while, I know his daughter quite well now, and she had said that he was a great jokester and prankster, so he would enjoy, even after he was gone, that he's still scaring me. So, but it's a great exhibit for our visitors. We have boats, which is highly unusual on historic canal, and one of the things we're very, very proud of. We have 4 boats. They are named after lakes. It's the Ontario, the Iroquois, the Erie, and the Otisco. They were all built by the volunteers on the premises. They are all New York State inspected passenger vehicles. All of our pilots have their New York State licenses. We use them mostly, that back left one on the left-hand side. That's our largest one. It seats 28 passengers, that pontoon boat. So we use that the most. That's our workhorse. and it gets used for every education program, which we'll talk about. But we do public boat rides, as Dave had referenced in the intro, Wednesdays and Sundays at 1, 2, and 3. It's a 45-minute narrated tour over our aqueduct, and we teach you, hopefully, a whole bunch of stuff. And but we started this year charters, and the chartering was very successful. It's another way to bring income into the not-for-profit, doing something we're already doing. And it's been really fun to, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but to kind of reach into some other markets too, to get them out to the park and enjoying it. We have some boats on land. So that is a buoy boat to the left. It was 1930s model on the barge canal. It delivers kerosene to the buoys. In fact, there's a white buoy underneath the building there that you can see. So before batteries and solar power and all that good stuff, they fueled the buoys with kerosene, and they went from spot to spot. So we have some scaffolding on the back of that you can climb up, look at the engine, and it is one of the most popular exhibits at the park. And then to the right is the Catherine. So the Catherine was a houseboat, actually was on the old Oswego Canal at one point. It was then moved to the city of Syracuse, where a gentleman lived in it, I believe, for 40 years. And after that, family bought it and moved it to their pond to use as kind of a fishing spot. And then later it was donated to the park. And it's just kind of another example of a boat that you may have seen along the canal at one point or other. We have a steam engine exhibit. And unlike I thought when I first started, it is not steam engines for trains, but they are industrial steam engines, mostly around the turn of the 1900s into the early 1900s. To the left, the volunteer in the gray coat, that's Jim Mackesy. This is his baby. And you can see the pride and joy of his collection is this Corliss steam engine in the front. You can see the big flywheel over his shoulder. That was in the basement of the L.C. Smith Typewriter Company in the city of Syracuse. And when they were going to demolish the building, Jim found out about it and worked his magic to get it not only donated, but get it up and moved. And then all of the brass fittings, everything that needed to be cleaned up to get it working again, he either manufactured himself or found different places. We did have the use of a wood steam boiler until last year. And but at that time, we would have steam ups once a month, and this machine would actually operate and run. And there's about 30 other smaller machines. Some are completely put together. Some of them are in the process of being restored. Anything from some farming implements to machines that make rope, much smaller certainly than the Corliss. So this year we did try compressed air. It did not work as well as we would have liked. Certainly Jim would have liked, also really messy. We had the use of a small wood boiler for some of the smaller machines, but this is one area that we are working on to not only recruit some more volunteers. So if you're interested, come on over, but also to, just find some better safe ways that we can exhibit these incredible machines. And as mentioned in the title, Camillus Landing, Camillus is halfway on the Erie Canal. So I would argue that this is one of the most photographed signs, certainly by the cyclists on the Empire State Trail. So this sign is located across from our museum, across the canal. And you can see the mileage right there. The actual halfway point, 175 miles each way to Buffalo and Albany, is also noted a little bit further down the road. But we actually finally made this into a postcard because so many people were coming because it was halfway. We have section of Clinton's Ditch on the property. So of course you all know Clinton's Ditch, constructed 1817 to 1825. And what I believe today is the 198th anniversary of the opening the public opening of the first Erie Canal. So you can see we have signage up there, but most importantly, we have Prism. We also have the remains of a lock and an aqueduct from Clinton's Ditch. Unfortunately, it's underwater. With the bicentennial coming up, we are looking at a whole bunch of different opportunities for what we do have on site to be able to make them exciting, new, and visible for visitors. You can notice that overlook, hopefully, in that bottom right-hand photograph. We had a volunteer who was an educator, and when she passed away, she left money specifically for something that would help the kids learn more about the canal. So the volunteers built this overlook, and so we bring the students up there. They can sit up there and truly overlook Clinton's Ditch. Oh, by the way, our section was watered through in about 1820. This is another interesting piece. This is across the road from our main facility, but certainly a great place. This is Dill's Landing. Now, Dill's Landing was part of a military track for the Revolutionary War, which a lot of our area was. And Colonel Dill eventually ended up with this property. And when the canal went through, when Clinton's Ditch went through, they put a wide water in right near his house and a boat slip. And so he constructed stairs, actually built an additional house, and made it very easy for the packet boats to be able to be pulled over. You could walk right up the stairs to his place and get something to eat, something to drink, maybe some provisions along the way. And it was very successful. So successful, supposedly the legend goes, Colonel Dill buried a gold treasure on the property. And it is noteworthy enough that when this property was donated by the owner to us a few years ago, as part of the donation, it is written in that if anyone finds the buried treasure, the donator is going to claim half. And we do have people come over and with metal detectors and, they try their luck. So we're still looking though. The first enlargement we've talked about already quite a few times, but this is just to give you a little bit more detail. So again, constructed 1835 to 1862. Our section was watered between 1842 and 1845. It was a little stop and start there for a while. And in that photograph, you can see it's a lovely park. We just have some beautiful pictures there, and you can tell all the care that goes into it, certainly from the volunteers, but really from the community. So it's a very pretty place to come visit. We have a feeder and a spillway. So a spillway, you probably know, but it makes sense that water spills over it. That's to your right-hand side. So as you know, the first enlargement was built to be 7 foot deep, and you needed to keep that level because people were loading their boats, assuming you had a 7 foot level. If it was too much, you needed ways for the water to escape. The canal is actually right up against you. So in the front part of the picture, and then you see the spillway. And then that water on the far side, it's hard to see with distance, but that is 9 Mile Creek. And we're about 11 feet above 9 Mile Creek in that picture. I took this picture the end of April, and I'll tell you, this past spring, before this picture was taken, the water was roaring over that. So we really got to see it at work, which was nice. Now the feeder is over there to your left, and it's underneath the bridge. It looks like just a nice little stream. That is actually man-made. Our section of canal was notoriously hard to keep wet. It was a very dry area. And so they built this feeder that actually went, extended up through there and then up into the village of Camillus, where there was a small reservoir area. It had gates on it. It was fed by rainwater, but it was also fed by 9 Mile Creek. So if we had a drought, if there was a drought during that period of time, they could open the gates and they could add water, again, to keep that level, because that 7 feet was very important. And now we're at our aqueduct. So, as you all know from your place, there were 32 aqueducts on the first enlargement. And this is the 9 Mile Creek Aqueduct. I love this picture. It was through the Onondaga Historical Society about 1896. And if you look on the aqueduct, there is a horse and buggy up there. And I had someone comment that couldn't be because, you know, you certainly didn't allow horse and buggies, any sort of vehicles up where the mules were going to be. You were in the way. And I asked Dr. Beebe about it, and he said that is true, but that is thought to be an inspector. So the inspectors could do, you know, they needed access and they would, you know, do what they needed to do. So that is a photograph of an inspector. So the water that you see running underneath the arches, that is 9 Mile Creek. This was constructed in 1842. We have 4 arches, much smaller than yours, but we are considered the largest of the small aqueducts. So, but this is what it looked like, you know, more in use. However, with the end of this canal, with the start of the barge canal, you know, as we had already mentioned, you know, most of this area was abandoned. Certainly the canal was. And this is what the aqueducts looked like in about 2008. It's pretty interesting for ours, and I give credit to a family who lives just behind the aqueduct for much of this. So it was a family, the Thompsons family, who, if you come to the park today, you will still see their farm. The same family has continuously lived and farmed the property adjacent to this since the 1850s. And when the canal was closed, when it was abandoned, they were using this area. And so we think that that's partially why it was structurally intact. One, it was pretty rural and people forgot about it. Fishermen didn't, but other people did. But the stones were not removed. People didn't take the things. They weren't considered, it wasn't considered a danger. It wasn't filled in, wasn't knocked down. Obviously, the wood had rotted out. And so what you're seeing here, you see the arches, obviously, and then there are those stone chairs or stone seats that run underneath two stone pillars, which you can see one of the stone pillars on the left. This is where the wooden trunk or the wooden trough would sit in and carry the water over. Here's another shot on the left where you can see those stone chairs or those stone seats. And then over to the right, and I'm looking for a couple other photographs to show this, but, you know, they've had boat rides at Camillus for years, even before the aqueduct was restored. And they had put an earthen dam in, which you can see, that's where that grass is. You can see the aqueduct in the background, and then you've got grass, and then you've got the dock and the water. So they put the earthen dams in to be able to capture the water. So you had water in the first enlargement in the historic canal. But the boat rides used to leave the museum, go up a mile, and they would dock at the dock there. People would get off the boat and then they could go down and they could walk over the aqueduct. They'd be taught about it. They get back on the boat and they go back. So, but at a certain point, the volunteers said, why are we doing that? Why can't we rebuild it? And when the idea was initially brought up, they were told you can't rebuild it. No one has. It's not going to be possible. And that's something they never listened to. They still don't listen to that way of thinking. And so it took a long time, a lot of money. This is a $2.1 million project. They partnered with different federal, state, local agencies, private fundraising. It is actually why the Camillus Canal Society actually became a not-for-profit in 1996, was to be able to write grants for the restoration of the aqueduct. So in 2008, 2009, that process began. So you can see on the left where they're working on some of the bank work there. And then over to the right, again, see those stone chairs, the stone seats that are right there. They had to clear out all the debris, all the brush, everything there to make it way for that wooden trough. I will tell you this aqueduct was so incredibly well made, 1842, that when it was completed, they only had to replace 6 of the stones. Everything else is original to the aqueduct. Now, some of them they found down there in the water and they had to bring them up, but only 6 stones had to be fabricated to complete this. This is work on the wooden trunk itself. Now, originally it was 144-foot beams that went straight across, but that was 1842, and in 2008, 2009, 140-foot beams were not possible any longer. So they got special dispensation from SHPO and were able to use 77-foot beams, one right next to each other, to make that 144-foot length. I'm going to be honest with you, the rebuild of the aqueduct can be and has been an entire presentation. Dave Beebe does an amazing job with telling everyone how this went, but this was an incredibly extensive project that was incredibly successful. But here you can see them putting in some of the wood and also up the sides. Here's a great overhead shot where you can see they have now completed the floors. And again, you can see now that we've seen it without wood, you can see where the pillars are and then where those stone seats went underneath to support the weight of the wood, and then of course the water ultimately. And you can see 9 Mile Creek going underneath. One of the things that they did add to the aqueduct are valves. So these 2 valves, you can see close up on the left, and then in the right-hand picture you can see the 2 gray squares. Those do allow us to drain the canal. And we can open those up, have the canal drained. But it was an interesting thing before the aqueduct was restored, they used to drop the level of the canal every year because giving the banks time to dry out helps to keep them solid. And unfortunately, once you put the wood into the aqueduct, you cannot let it completely dry out or it will no longer be watertight. So they haven't been able to drop the level of the canal, and that is creating some challenges for us that we'll talk about in just a minute. But again, you can see now the walls are up, the trunk floor is down. And here it is pretty much completed with the water starting to go in there. Fun story that Dave likes to tell all the time is when this was nearing completion, everybody was asking, when are you going to take a boat over it? Or I want to bring my boat in and I want to be on the first boat. I want to be the first person to cross the aqueduct, since 1917. And he would always say, oh, a couple weeks. It's almost ready, a couple weeks. Well, when there was, I believe he says 6 inches of water in the aqueduct, his wife Liz climbed in a kayak and she was given the honor of being the first person to travel by water over the aqueduct before they sent other people over. So she certainly deserved that honor. So that's great. And here is one of the boats going over. I think it's all full of volunteers, but well-deserved also. So here is one of the boats going over the completed aqueduct. And again, you can see the wooden trough. You can see the stone pillars. It's a pretty amazing experience. It's a beautiful place. Again, here's a shot from above with our pontoon boat that we do the most rides on. But you can see it's a very active creek underneath, lots of fishing. They do stock it with the local fish hatchery with trout. So very active with wildlife, very active with fishermen, and just a beautiful place to be. You can see the Empire State Trail too, also going to the left. And I kind of referenced this, but one of the challenges and one of the big challenges we have right now at the park and will continue to have are leaks. Now, leaks in the banks of the canal have been around since there's been a canal. I mean, that's why you had hurry up boats and and bank walkers, was to be able to, kind of catch those things as they were happening. But this is a 178-year-old body of water that was never supposed to last this long. And so we are starting to experience a lot of leaks. And there is some thought that because we can't dry out the banks, it's certainly not helping. And trees don't help. The trees are great while they're still alive. They're not great after they die. And the place had been abandoned for 50 years. So there's a lot of tree life there that wouldn't have been there. But we're trying two different methods. These were things we tried this past, actually a year ago, the same time of year. We dropped the level of the canal. And the first thing we tried is the upper left-hand picture, and that's just traditional. We had three leaks about a quarter mile apart from each other. And we hired a guy with an excavator. He went down 14 feet, filled the holes with clay, and we waited to see how that would hold. The other method that we tried is the bottom left and bottom right. So this is actual grouting. This is what they do on the current canal because the barge canal also experiences quite a few leaks. So as this, it's a cement, a bentonite mixture, a slurry. And that slurry is mixed in that hopper. And then in the bottom left, you can see the big injector arm, but we injected 5,000 pounds of cement into the bank leading up to the aqueduct. That had a significant leak that really worried us because we were worried about it going underneath and eroding some of the structure of the aqueduct itself, which it didn't, but we were worried. So the grouting, once we finished, we closed the valves back up. It took about 3 weeks for the water to return to an average level. And we had winter, you have snow, you have runoff, and as I mentioned, we had a lot of rain, so we did fill the canal certainly in the spring. And what we found is the grouted areas held better. And so what we're going to do is we have 3 new leaks on the berm side. And so actually next week, we'll be taking the level of the canal down again. And for those, we are going to try grouting them to see if that's a more permanent solution. But as I said, I mean, leaks have been around as long as the canal. You just don't want to have them, especially, when you have what we have at our park. So how do we do it? I've mentioned it about 1 million times, but it cannot be mentioned too much. Our volunteers, this is how this happens. We have a lot of different occasions, so I just threw a couple pictures together to show you. I'm sure you guys participate probably in the Canal Clean Sweep in the spring, the upper left-hand corner. That was a group of Girl Scouts. We have, I think, 10 gardens on site that have all been adopted by different volunteers, and they take care of them throughout the year. But, spring is a good time to clean up. And so that was a troop of Girl Scouts who were amazing, who came in and helped clean out the garden right by the museum. To the right, we try to celebrate and decorate for different holidays. Right now, the whole place is decorated in pumpkins, at least the museum is, for fall. We do a lot of cleaning. You can see one of the volunteers in the bottom right. And we do a lot of splitting of wood and harvesting of wood. We have 420 acres. That's a lot of trees, and trees fall down. And so for a long time, they would burn them or they put them, kind of push them back into the woods. But the volunteers have to harvest all of them. They can't stay there. I should have mentioned, I don't think I did, the agreement with the town is that the town actually gives the Canal Society a significant stipend, a generous stipend to pay all the bills of the Canal Society. But in return, all of the labor has to be done by volunteers. And so the volunteers have to mow, they have to take care of the trees, they have to take care of the buildings, painting, anything that we do, that's their job. And so this was, again, harvesting the trees. We do split some of the wood, we use it, and try and find homes for it locally. If you are a volunteer, you never know what I'm going to ask you to do. So you can see Daisy there on the left. Some nice young men volunteered for the day, and we decided to move the mule. So she's on the go over there. And we try to make it ability friendly to everyone. So the woman on the right, that's Betty. She's wonderful. Betty had a stroke a few years ago, and communication is a little bit of a challenge for her, but she loves the park. She and her husband volunteer together, and she is right there welcoming people, saying hello, showing them where the bathroom is. And yes, we have an upstairs, so please look up there too. And we love having her. She's great. In the center, I wanted to put this picture in. We have a fire pit. And this is, where a lot of the wood that, is too small, we can't use it. We do burn it. But that gentleman who is tending the fire pit is Paul Bertan. And Paul Bertan has also been at the park for the entire 51 years. So the dedication that we have is really incredible. We have people just come out for a day. This was a couple who takes care of our wreaths for the holiday season. We have interpreters that can come in as part of our education program, or even just part of an event, or just a single day if they want to. And as I've referenced a million times already, because of all the things that we have to do, you have to have the right equipment. So we have a lot of big toys. So we have tractors, front end loaders, bucket tractors, zero turn mowers. This year we bought a backhoe, which the guys are completely refurbishing. But in order to take care of everything, you have to not only have the equipment, but the people who know how to do it. And this is part of how we keep them. And I kind of laugh about it, but we feed them. We do work crews. Come in Wednesdays and Saturdays from 8 to 12. And all the outside work that has to be done, all the maintenance, boat activities, that all has to be done during that period of time. And then at 12 noon, we have other volunteers who come in and feed everyone. And when I first got the job, I'm going to be honest, I got the budget. And we give the volunteers who make lunch a stipend. So we give them a $40 stipend to help cover their costs. They can be feeding anywhere from 10 to 25 people, depending on the day. And, 40 times 2 times 52 weeks is a lot of money. And so I initially said, well, I'm cutting this because, I've worked for great organizations. I worked for Special Olympics, the zoo. If we had a big event, maybe we'd buy you pizza and we thank you and you go on your merry way. We didn't feed you all this, twice a week. And then I went to my first lunch. And then I realized how important they are, and they build community. And I will tell you, during the active season, I have a short list of volunteers of 90 people that I'll see within at least once every 3 weeks, if not twice a week. These people are incredibly active, but we've created this community for them too. And I see it at work all the time. We have widows and widowers. We have a number of gentlemen, unfortunately, right now going through dementia with their spouses, and they have each other to talk to. And that's an incredibly valuable thing, especially today. So upper right-hand corner, we have a pavilion that is also available for rent. But I think this might have been Clean Sweep Day. This was the day that we had a lot of volunteers in. So we opened up our kitchens and fed everybody out there. And then in your bottom right, that's Carol. Carol is one of our faithful lunch providers. In fact, she made lunch yesterday. So we try to find a place for everybody. And I would be remiss in talking about our park if I didn't talk about one of our most popular volunteers. This is Covey. And we laugh, but this is a very popular part of the park. So Covey is a Muscovy duck. She showed up about 2.5 years ago. She can fly. Certainly we started feeding her because we love animals. So she gets her cracked corn, but she could leave, but she doesn't. She has a good deal here. We don't know where she came from, but she seems to be here to stay. And here's a little duck trivia that you never needed to know, but all the duck breeds in the world are derived either from Muscovy ducks, which is a domestic meat breed, and that's what Covey is, Muscovies, or mallards. And you can see in the background of that one picture a lot of mallards. We bubble one of our boats in the water all winter, so we have open water, so we have hundreds of ducks that come in, plus Covey's getting some food, so they share in that. But if a mallard and a Muscovy ever produce offspring, The offspring will be hybrids. They are infertile and they are considered the mules of the duck world. They are actually called mulards. And I want baby mule ducks on historic canals so badly. Unfortunately, Covey hates the other ducks. So we know she's a girl because she has laid a lot of eggs. But so far, she hasn't found her Prince Charming in the duck world, but maybe this year. Education. Dave had mentioned it in the past. We have an incredible education program. We are so proud of it. I'm going to tell you, I inherited it. I had very little to do with it, but it is one of the best out there. This woman, actually greeting the kids, this is Janet Connors. She was a teacher for her entire career. She retired 10 years ago, and she is the head of our education programs. And I just want to walk you through them because we're just so excited about them. These are a group of kids arriving for the day. I will say at the onset here, yes, you are seeing kids' faces. This is a project that we did in the Erie Canal National Heritage Corridor, asked us if they could come and photograph some of our classes because we participate in their Ticket to Ride program. I'm not sure whether you guys do or not, but Ticket to Ride is a resource of grant money where schools can get their buses paid for, and the facilities could actually get a ticket price for them for each student. And so they wanted to, and will be this year, advertising that program more to hopefully recruit some more funding. And so we were happy to oblige them that. So we, between May 1st and the middle of September, we did a couple summer school classes, and we did some homeschooling groups in the summer. Most of this happens in May and June, but we taught over 2,000 fourth graders on site. And they're usually groups of about 80 to 90 kids. We divide them into 3 groups. One group is divided again in half, and they go into the museum. The kids on the left are in the downstairs section in the museum. That's a lock model. It also has an aqueduct attached to it, so they're learning about that. And then half those kids go upstairs and learn about life on the canal. And then one group will go outside and learn. So I want to point out this picture. So those black gates in the background, those are the bottom third of the actual gates from Lock 50, from Gears Lock. So when the canal was closed, our nearest lock, although the aqueduct was pretty much left alone, the lock was not. It was filled in. It was used for different things. There's a lot of boulders and that sort of thing in it now. And the gates disappeared. But in the mid-90s, Dave and some of the volunteers started thinking, I think they're still there. They're pretty sure that they were still there. And they went out there and they dug them up. These volunteers are amazing. So that is the lower third of the actual gates from Gears Lock. You can see the hardware. It's all original. You can see the valve in the lower right-hand corner. And so those are on display with us. And then the volunteers made a miniature version right in front that the kids can actually operate and open and close the valves and open and close the doors to, again, get more hands-on so they'll remember what it's all about. They also go into our lock demo area. So you can see on the left, they're getting some overall instruction. And then it's not a great picture, but that blue rectangular cabinet in the front in between the 2 volunteers is our watered block demonstration. And you can see that to the right. So the volunteers built this. The kids can actually lock a boat through. They can dump a lock. They load the boats with different model items, depending on whether they're going to the east or the west. And again, as much interaction as we can get with the kids, they'll remember later. They take a hike up to Clinton's Ditch, get a little bit of the nervous energy out too on that walk. But you can see on that right-hand side, there are the kids climbing up into the overlook that I showed you before. And then the third group gets a boat ride. And this happens to be a boat ride with me on this particular day. So we take them out there. Sometimes we are a kid's first ever boat ride. So that's a pretty good honor for us. But they learn about the canals. They also learn about what it would have been like if they had lived on a canal bight and worked with their family. And obviously they get to tour our aqueduct also. One of the things that we've really been looking into, especially with looking at the bicentennial coming up, is how do we make connections with new groups? You know, all of us on this are probably all history lovers. We love the canal. That's not everybody. And so how do we get other people to come in that hopefully will develop a love, you know, of history and of the canal? But maybe that's not their first entree to our location. So here's one of the things we do. Now, these are our boat rides. And with our boat rides, I'll tell you, when I first came on board, I was advertising them as they had in the past of this incredible narrated historic activity that you can take over the only rewatered, restored, navigable aqueducts left from the first enlargement. And we would get passengers, you know, 10 or 12 or 8, and they would enjoy it, and that would be great. I had the opportunity this summer to ride a new boat called the Rivery, which is in the city of Rochester, which if you get a chance, definitely go take a ride. But although we rode for free because it was their inaugural trip, I got their brochure and was surprised at how expensive it was, and then did a little bit of research. And the nearest 45-minute narrated boat tour to our location is roughly $25 a ticket. The cheapest one that I found in the state was $19 a ticket. And so we charge $5. We charge $5 for adults, $3 for kids. Under 5 is free, and we have a family maximum of 15. And I turned around and started saying, you know what? This is the most affordable boat ride in New York State. So come ride our boat. Knowing full well that when they came and rode our boat, we were going to teach them about the canal and they were going to have a great time. And we would all achieve our goals. And when I switched that up, we started selling out boats this summer. And we had, not counting the children and not counting charters this year, we had over 1,000 people take our public boat rides. And I think that was a huge hit. And we had people come back twice. So that's always good. This picture, probably these will look familiar to you. This is Ticket to Ride, of course. So that's probably the most famous supported bike tour that crosses, you know, Buffalo to Albany in the middle of July. So this was Ticket to Ride. On the left, the nice lady in the yellow shirt, she is our volunteer in charge of this. She has done this ride twice, so she has a particular affinity to it. So we want them to come to Camillus and feel welcome. We have cowbells and music, and we sell hot dogs and ice cream, and we have boat rides, and we actually set up a little mock post office so the cyclists can buy a postcard, and we'll mail it to their families from the halfway point that they're halfway done. And it's a great day, and true to form, because we're in the middle, they reach us on Wednesday at lunchtime. And, you know, it's a good 2 hours of cyclists, but we see thousands of cyclists all year. In fact, I'd love to get a count from this year as to how many people use the Empire State Trail, if that's possible, because we have so many cyclists coming through that although Ticket to Ride is a great activity and we certainly enjoy participating in it, that's not our bread and butter. And we see, anecdotally for me, I think we had many more cyclists doing California to Massachusetts than I remember seeing last year. We actually had a walker last year. It was a 75-year-old woman with new knees and a German Shepherd, and she was walking from Ohio to Massachusetts. And the Empire State Trail is how she crossed. Now, do these cyclists care about Camillus history? I don't know, but we're going to try and make them do it while they're here. We also want to participate in our local community. One, it's a good idea. And two, because of that stipend that the town of Camillus gives the Camillus Canal Society, that's taxpayer dollars. And so we want to show the people of Camillus who are paying that, that's a great investment. And so we participate in a lot of things. This was the Memorial Day parade, and this has kind of a nice story to it. The parade float for the Camillus Canal Society has been incredibly popular for many years. But unfortunately, a lot of the people who really enjoyed it either aren't with us or cannot decorate in the way they used to. So the first year, myself and one other volunteer decorated the float. It was terrible. It was ugly. I did it. I'll say it. It was terrible. And so this year I said, we're not doing that. We're not going to be embarrassed. And so we were looking for partners, and we have a Girl Scout troop that actually meets in our museum year round. And so I went to the young women and said, look, if you help us and you decorate, I'll find people to walk and be in the float, but if you help us, if we win anything, I'll split it with you. And they jumped right in. In fact, that's our float on the side. That's my favorite part on the left. They did silhouettes of a mule and a packet boat, and there's actually rope in between. There's line in between them. But we just found out, literally within the last 2 or 3 weeks, that we won second prize in the parade. And so that's our winning plaque that we were awarded by the VFW, and there's some volunteers and Dave Beebe to the right and Girl Scouts to the left. And before they left, the Girl Scouts said that because we won a $200 prize, so we split it with them. So they got 100 and we got 100. But they told me that second is good, but next year we're winning first place. So that's good. On our berm side, we have a trail, and we've put a different fitness stations in there. So you can see there's pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups. So again, if you're coming for recreation, let us make it even more attractive, and hopefully you'll stick around and come visit. The little thing on the right, I will tell you, this is one of the most popular parts of the entire park. This is just little built-ons to the museum itself. And this is a lending library and a puzzle lending library. And there are people at these little things every day, trading out books, trading out their puzzles, checking to see what's new. It's all free. It's all on the honor system. Really, really popular. And another market, I'm a dog lover and animal lover, and dogs are a huge market for us right now, and their owners, of course. We are one of only 2 pet-friendly, dog-friendly parks in the area, and so we do encourage people to come and walk their dogs. They can come in. We have dog biscuits and dog water stations. And the dog to the right, actually, in the little covered wagon, that dog and her owners had taken 5 months off. They had ridden from Sacramento. They were on their way to New York City, and they stopped. And that's a little custom-made covered wagon for that dog. No e-bikes. That was she said that was the one thing she might have changed. She might have ridden an e-bike instead of pedaling that dog and the wagon behind her. But it was a really fun visit. We did actually, one of the first visitors of the year was a gentleman on an e-bike with his dog, and he was going from New Hampshire to the Gulf of Mexico this summer. The 2 pictures that you see to the right, we are a training site for our local Guiding Eyes for the Blind puppy raiser group. And we encourage them to come, obviously, and walk their dogs. But we have one day where they come, they ride the boat. They get used to the vibrations, the microphone, the different type of floor. They can ride our elevator. And the hope is that as these dogs graduate and hopefully become seeing eye dogs, if they get on another boat at some point, they will have already had the experience with us and learned how to do it. And if you're going to have dogs, you have to have dog cleanup areas. So we have quite a few of those too. And then another market we're trying to break into is kayakers. We have one section of watered area we have is 2 miles long. The other section is 6 miles long. And especially the 2 mile section, we have 5 docks, excuse me, that you could get on your kayak from. And we're really trying to build up this little market, especially for beginners, because the only boat you're going to encounter is one of ours. And that's going to be few and far between. but trying to make this beginner friendly. Come bring your kids, come, jump in a kayak, learn how to do it. And again, enjoy the park. And as I had already mentioned, we are year round. That's a cross-country skier from this past winter. Now we are in Syracuse, and the past couple winters we have not had a lot of snow, but we do have a contractual agreement with a local snowmobile club who, when we get enough snow, will groom the trails. So that's good for them. It's good for the walkers and also good for the skiers. But again, how can we make this a valuable resource for lots of people to come and enjoy? And there we are. So to the left, just real quick, is a little commercial. This is a picture that was taken of Sim Store in our boathouse, and it actually won the National Heritage Erie Canalway Calendar Contest a few years ago. And the one to the right is a picture of that second section of water that I told you about that I actually took. But hopefully, you learned a little bit about our place, but also now would really, really love to come and visit it. And you can find us on our Facebook page and as well as the website, which Dave already had pointed out to you. So there we go. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. That was informative. It was great. And I hope that this has inspired people to get out there. I know I attended a Friends of Schoharie Crossing field trip. It was 2015, 2016, something like that. And I have to make it back out there again. Had the privilege of meeting Liz Beebe when we were out there, and what a ball of energy. What a ball of energy. And that energy has been wonderfully placed into an ongoing preservation effort, and wonderful, capable hands such as yourself and all of the volunteers at Camillus Erie Canal Park. So I appreciate you taking the time this evening to provide this program, and for those folks that are on, this is a good opportunity if they have any questions to put them in the chat and we can pose them to you. I was hoping I could, I'll make a couple of quick observations from along the way, if you don't mind. First off, added duck lesson, the added bonus trivia. Really appreciate that. I'll put that in the back of my head somewhere, and it'll come out some way, some shape or form. If it's ever on Jeopardy, I will donate half of what I win on Jeopardy.
Beautiful.
And as we're hopefully getting a few questions that come up, I think it's interesting what you had said about Colonel Dills and the Dills Landing and the buried treasure, because it totally reminds me, particularly if people are still seeking that treasure, of like the money diggers of the 1830s and 1840s, and where people were going out just assuming that somewhere out in the landscape of New York there was buried treasure from ancient civilizations. So that's still alive and well in that part of the state, I take it?
You never know. It's kind of like what your winning lottery ticket. I will tell you that we did have some people who had gone out metal detecting and came back across came back across the road so excited, and they hadn't found the treasure. But what they had found was an 8-pound weight. And we did have it checked, and it is from the period. And we believe that it was used probably to, as they were loading and unloading grain, that was part of what they would have used to measure it out. They actually found it in the crook of a tree. So it must have sat on the ground for quite a long time. And then at some point the tree grew up and it grew up in it. So was a treasure to us, not necessarily to the finders, though.
Yes. Treasure has many different forms. And there's a few comments in the chat about, that you've inspired them to go. Frank Sadowski with the wonderful eriecanal.org website. He says that he's going to hopefully get back out there in 2024. I'm hoping to get out there as soon as that I'm able to and check it all out. Part of that's inspired by the uptick in the great social media that the Canal Park has been offering. I'm glad that you shared the image of the dog in the wagon. That was one of my favorite ones that came out recently.
Social media is something that we really have to become really good at. We're also doing a lot. I know other museums are too, but we're a little behind the technology curve. But we're going to be doing a lot this year with QR codes, and also offering free Wi-Fi to enable people and encourage people to use those codes. But that way, our museum is amazing, but it's not open all the time. And so what we want to do is have more interaction along the trail. So as people go through, they know what they're looking at, and they'll be able to use their phones to do that. I'm constantly amazed that, the people will come to exercise, but they're still just reading their phone along the way. So we're going to put that to use then, and educate them whether they like it or not. So.
Right. Yeah. And it's great that you have the education program. So you got to get them while they're young.
Yep. And now we're into, we have had grandparents now bring their fourth grade grandchildren, and the grandparents had been on a school tour at some point to Camillus. So it's pretty humbling to be part of something that's been so important for so long.
Correct. Yeah, and what's also great is the amount of preservation work that you're doing there, and in programs like this or other capacities on social media, and hopefully you incorporate this into your other ways to connect in your education programs, the preservation effort, so that people have an appreciation of what it takes within that community and across the state, and those people visiting from other places.
Absolutely. And the power of one. I mean, it wasn't one volunteer, but the power of a small group of people to really, see something, have a vision, and make it happen. I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed in our day to day that you just don't think you're important, but your ideas are, and what you put into your community is, and hopefully we can foster more of that.
Right. And speaking of people that will stop in, the historic site manager here from Scurry Crossing has popped up in the message chat as well. He did try to stop in at the last canal conference, arriving a little bit after closing, which was probably, all the excitement of a canal conference and everybody being there. So I'm going to take that as an assumption. I don't want to speak for Paul, but that sounds like he's pardon the term, chomping at the bit to get back out there and check out all that you have to offer.
Well, I think this is good. We'll do a little exchange. We'll go to each other's places, and we'll get you a boat ride. It'll be great.
I'm always up for a field trip.
We like field trips too, so that's all good.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I realized I missed so much getting there after closing.
Yeah, and again, that kind of goes back to our point that we've realized that too, and so we actually have some potential plans for our lock demo building to put more large exhibits in there with some good signage. Our signage needs some help right now, so but again, what can we do for that person who comes at 5 o'clock or at 7 o'clock at night, or or at 7 o'clock in the morning before we're there and open, to really be able to show them what's there, and especially for local people to have that sense of pride, that this is coming through. A very interesting thing we just started tracking this year, but where people are coming from. And we obviously know New York State, that's where people are coming from, and we assumed that it was Pennsylvania, maybe Ohio, that people, our second largest state of visitors is California. And that really surprises me, that California, and maybe it's some of those cyclists coming around, but something out in California is getting people excited about the Erie Canal. So we're going to continue tracking that information too, to better help us kind of talk to those people.
That is fantastic. And one of the things that I appreciate about this presentation is that we got the history of the Erie Canal, particularly in and around the Camillus area, but being a location for over 50 years in and of itself is its own level of historic site, sort of like the Waylock building in Syracuse, having been a museum longer than it was a Waylock. There's these elements to it that I think the community and the greater population kind of appreciates when you can put it in that context for them that this is an ongoing, still operating system, but it's an ongoing story that connects us with our history.
And I will say here in Central New York, we're actually a little spoiled by how many canal-related places that we have. You know, we've got Chittenango to the east of us. There's us. There is the Erie Canal Museum downtown. Now there's the Old Erie Canal Park at Port Byron, and a lot of good things happening out there. Montezuma, the Montezuma Park and the Richmond Aqueduct, they have a great new exhibit there. You know, all these little places, but they all hook together. And one of the things we did last year was for our volunteers at the Erie Canal Museum in Syracuse, as well as Port Byron, we did kind of field trip days where our volunteers could rotate through because even within us, you know, we have the water and we have the aqueduct, but Syracuse has the Waylock, and certainly more information on all the canals. And then Port Byron has the locks that you can walk through, as well as the, you know, the mule bar and the tavern. You know, they have the commerce of the time all on the first enlargement. And so I think all three groups benefited by having our volunteers see how each site fits into the others. Chittenango certainly with their dry dock. So it's pretty exciting, you know, to be able to see all those places just in a small area where we are. And so maybe when you come out to visit us, you'll also go and stop by some of those places too.
Absolutely. It's worthwhile just to go to Camillus, but when you add it into a package like that, how could anybody say no?
How could you, really?
I'm not seeing any other questions, comments, concerns, recipes, or anything else here in the chat. So Lisa, thank you very much for your time this evening, and I appreciate the participants that have joined in, tuned in for this evening's presentation. I wish you the very best out there, and we'll be coming to see you pretty soon.
Well, I'm excited about that. And again, thank you for this opportunity. I truly appreciate it. And now we can go watch the Bills game.
All right. Good luck to them. Good luck to you. Have a wonderful winter, and everyone be safe. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Lisa.